Right. Okay, so good, very good morning, everyone. What's the date today? 13th of May, 2026. Okay, so we are in the markets today. DXY. Well, my overwhelming thought that's getting boring. I am DXY bullish, of course, but potentially there could be a way to manipulate again, as we always start to say, that DXY weakness coming at the market. I mean, I'm not really. Uh, so for that idea, I must be honest. As we're seeing here, we're using the 4 hour gap that created an order block as an order block. I don't really like to do that, but the fact of the matter is we have had price not closing above that area. We've had a wick out of that area, and potentially we might be looking to start a bit of a move a short looking move on the 15-minute time frame. But with that said, I do feel like a bit more of some confirmation before looking to use the XY weakness would be necessary. And the reason for that is, of course, this 4 hour order block on that higher time frame. That's all it is. We've got a previous daily high in the area as a result of yesterday, that 4 hour candle wick to the highs. That's giving us that previous daily high. But with that said, you can really look to understand how these highs could really be targeted and manipulated quite easily. I've started putting that on the chart when we're in sort of nearly areas where we would look to, well, where retail traders would look to just place an immediate short position from. And I believe those types of areas are pretty much attacked and obliterated, and price starts to move through those areas quite violently. And in line with saying that, where would I believe price would likely to go if price is then going to break through this area? And then for me, a much better position in terms of the higher time frame point of interest, which would then start from the daily time frame. So we do have a daily order block here that price hasn't touched yet. And of course, once price starts to push through that daily order block, of course, at the same time, excuse me, we are then having the daily 50 MA supporting us for the day in regards to shorts of that DXY. So although we're at a nice point of interest, for me to get that full confirmation, first of all, on the DXY, excuse me, I would need to see price come into that area. There is no 15-minute order block to the left here for me to even look to refine. Therefore, I need to see one being generated. But with that said, I'd have to look for that first and foremost on the DXY, which is telling me any cross pair long positions, i.e., using the DXY weakness, it's very unlikely I'm going to be the first person in that trade. And with that said, I'm not today in particular, I'm not going to just be waiting for a bearish engulfing candle to come out of that area. And my standard practice would then be using a 15-minute order block that's being used. And my reasoning for that is because this week, we are starting a very clear intention in terms of bullish momentum coming out of the market. So that's just my opinion. And then when I start to put that to the technicals, it does kind of make sense. There are better areas, as I've said, up at those highs where I would like to see price reach on the DXY to then look to short that. But if we also look to these areas, i.e., so what's price doing, let's say, on the 15-minute time frame? Is there a clear directional trend in terms of lower lows and lower highs? Well, to bet against myself, then I could say, well, from this area on the 15-minute time frame, we did create a lower low. Therefore, once price starts to get back to that area, then potentially we'll be looking for a reaction. However, what happened yesterday is we came into that area, in my opinion. We had a reaction out of it, hence why we were looking for US dollar CAD shorts. I took a G CAD long, even there were potential for a UJ short based upon the fact that price actually pushed up into that area. So the fact that price now is returning to that area, I believe that that's the liquidity that was sat there. We've already gained that benefit. So a new day, I want to see price do something better or do something more on the DXY before I look to entertain that. Now, the pair that I do like to trade, well, I would like to trade, of course, it's AU at the moment because AU for me, it's the only cross pair. Well, certainly when I woke up this morning, it looked that way. Yeah, it's the only cross pair, in my opinion, that's really utilizing the fact of DXY strength. So, of course, if the DXY is strong, AUD/USD is going to move to the downside. And then it's for me to understand, would that make sense to look for AUD/USD to short? And at the moment, overwhelmingly, I believe that this is the only pair currently from my memory from this morning that actually looks as if it could, well, there are reasons on this pair alone to look to go short. And what I mean by that as well is if we start to compare GU, AU, and EU, from my memory, EU looks technically to go long from the current areas. We'll have a quick glance at it while we're there. Exactly, technically long from this current area of the 4 hour order block, which again, I'm not going to be looking for an immediate long from that position, but just to stay on topic. And then GU, again, technically long from these lows. So using the fact that our thought process is long on the DXY, but we can understand there could well be a rejection from this area. We kind of have to understand, well, does it make sense in the immediacy? And do we need to be the first trader in that position? Or can we just look to ride the wave once the trend actually starts to develop? So going back to AU and understanding that, well, if this area breaks on AU, then of course AU will look to go to the downside. So all we're going to really need to see is a slight pullback on AU, which would be yeah, a slight pullback on AU, which would be a slight pullback on the DXY. Now, what that could mean is the DXY. Hey, good morning, Denise. What that could mean is the DXY has every intention to start pushing up into these areas. Once we then get the slight pullback on the DXY, then of course that will be AU giving us a very, very clean setup for the short and recognizing then the DXY could well indeed break these areas and start pushing up further, and then AUD/USD will head into these highs. We'd get that push, pull back, and then the short using the DXY strength potentially to come out of the market. So, of course, technically it looks average, in my opinion, the DXY for a potential short. However, I think using all of the technical analysis that we have and understanding, well, why is AU looking to go short, whereas EU currently looks as if technically it can go long? And the DXY is in an area that really, I believe we've used the liquidity coming out of that market until proven otherwise. I think AU at the moment is going to be a bit of a firm favorite. So back to AU to understand really why. So higher time frame weekly order block, looking for price to move to the downside from that area. So of course that limits already the fact that I don't believe we should really be looking to take long positions into that higher time frame order block where ordinarily we're looking for price to trade out of it anyway. So of course, then we find that down to the daily time frame. And what we can see is just on the daily time frame, the most recent daily candles, they're just stagnant as a result of, in my opinion, waiting for the DXY to really choose its directional side. Then we have to understand that we've already come to that conclusion on the DXY that longer term, the DXY trading out of its higher time frame order block is looking to go long. We've had a good positive daily candle close yesterday. Potentially, DXY could roll short down into the imbalance of that daily candle, which would be around the 4 hour 50 MA. I wouldn't be surprised to see that, to be quite honest, and then have price then make that higher high. Then that would line up perfectly with AU for a short position down. Now, the only caveat to that is, of course, the 4 hour 50 MA on AU where price is respecting quite nicely. We haven't had a candle close below that area for a considerable amount of time. However, what I can see on AU as a bit of a clue is this. So price was, of course, making those higher highs and higher lows. We'll say higher high, higher low, higher high. This could have well been a higher low for a higher high continuation, but we failed to make a higher high. So what I'm seeing this as now is in fact the first clue in the market that AU could be looking to turn around. If we call this a low, after a low, of course, we're then looking for price to pull back into an area of imbalance to create what could then be a lower low after a lower high. However, the only hold up to that is that 4 hour 50 MA. So I'd be very, very happy to trade down into that 4 hour 50 MA. But of course, the better scenario is a 4 hour candle close below that 4 hour 50 MA, also breaking structure to the left, which will confirm our initial thought process here that indeed that is the lower low. Here's the lower high. The lower low would then be created, pull back into a lower high for a continuation. And then that, of course, would line up beautifully with the fact that the DXY, in my opinion, is going to break this area. So that's my favorite of the day. And then going over to the 15-minute time frame, you can see there are some decent points of interest that are refined in that area. And when there are that many points of interest within a 4 hour order block, of course, my highest probable opportunity would be to wait for that highest area. If you do have an order block, always look to short from as high as you possibly can. If it's in favor of course, an order block looking to come out of that trading direction. For example, that weekly order block. For a very long time, I've been waiting to take shorts out of that weekly order block, and we've had where price has wicked in. We've gained some nice profits and price coming out of it. But essentially, now we're at the stage where we are at the absolute highs of that weekly order block. If you look at my crosshair, in fact, what I'll do, I'll just put that on all intervals just briefly for us, for you to have a good look at it. We are trading in it. So we are pretty much as high as we possibly can be. Okay, not as high as we possibly can be, but we are pretty high within that weekly order block. So absolutely no long positions for me at this time. And then we're just waiting to have that clue, the setup and the entry criteria to take any short that pretty much presents itself, because you're in an element where if you're wrong, you're just wrong at this stage, and it would make absolute sense to take a short out of that area. However, if we look to EU, there is kind of ample reasons why you wouldn't really, well, me personally, why I'm quite against looking for a long from this area at the moment, despite it being a key structure point. I can quite foresee price pushing up from that area and pulling back. However, in my opinion, that would just be a pullback for a lower low continuation. But again, it's all opinions based on technicals. Just let price do its thing and then work accordingly. But at the moment, as I say, overwhelmingly, AU is going to be a favorite at the minute. Cool. Any questions, team? I'd be glad to answer them, but I hope that that makes sense based on, okay, we are DXY bullish at some point, in my opinion. I mean, it's Wednesday, so we are midweek. So therefore, if the DXY is going to give that bullish intent, it's got to happen sooner rather than later. If not, we just have to start the entire process again next week. So that's what I've got at the moment for AU. GCAD. So GCAD is still in this GCAD long position. It's not doing much at all. But with that said, where are we? So higher time frame analysis, weekly order block. So I can't look for a where is that? Yeah, I can't look for a short position, unfortunately, unless I've got a lot of range towards the upside. So I would be happy to take a short from up at these highs and then manage my position, trade back down into that weekly order block. But while we're in this order block, for example, if I did have a 15-minute order block like so, then I can't be looking for a short position there for the same reasons like on AU. I'm understanding that this weekly order block is pushing price out of it. Therefore, I can't sell whilst we're in that order block. Now, Weekly time frame discussed that weekly 50 MA supporting price, of course, towards the upside. So very happy to look for a long position based on that type of confluence. Now we've got, where is that actually? Okay, that's quite a way down. Yeah. Okay. We'll start daily now, time frame. So refined within that weekly order block. We've got a daily order block right down at those lows. So that will, of course, be the better case scenario for the long position as we start to refine this daily order block down. And if you see my crosshair within that daily order block, we're just here within that 4 hours now refined. However, in the immediacy, what we can see is prices being held at this area. So therefore, it tells me that I should really be looking in that area to understand why and what's going on. So we've had a push out of that market, which of course broken structures to the left. I'll draw it here for you. So we had that range, we had the push out, roll back into the area, higher high created, left an order block behind. So of course, once we then return back to the order block, that's given us that break of structure, just like on any time frame, we'll be looking for a bit of a setup compiled with an entry criteria looking for the long. And that's what we did yesterday. However, and today is a new day, so we're going to have to lead with a bit more of a setup criteria because we can't simply rely on what's happened yesterday. So, in my opinion, although I'm already in this position, I'd be more than happy to compound it. However, I can't take that position based on the fact if price just rolls back down to this 15-minute order block. Going to need to see something come out of the market first and foremost. And what that won't be today, particularly because this order block has been mitigated, I can't just look for a 15. I mean, I can, but I don't think that would make good sense to just wait for a 15-minute bearish engulfing candle, use that engulfing candle to then start the process by way of new 15-minute order block. Of course, you can do that when it makes sense. But for me personally, I can see that there isn't a clear trend on that 15-minute time frame. I believe that the initial break of structure that we took, that was had, we already had taken that position yesterday anyway. So coming to the charts on a new day, if I'm just seeing an area in the market that's doing not a lot, you guys know what I'd be waiting for. The same thing that I'd be waiting for on the 4 hour time frame. The reason why I didn't take any long positions here because we're in a 4 hour range. Therefore, what I'd be looking to see if price is going to break that structure point, pull back, hopefully breaking that structure point would then leave me a 15-minute order block behind. If it doesn't, then at that stage, I'd be happy. Well, that's the only way I can take that position by waiting for then a 15-minute. If I'm going to take it in a non-aggressive way, then I'd have to be waiting for that. Excuse me, 15-minute bullish engulfing candle, restart the process, and then from that, once I've got this, that's the entry, that's the setup confirmed. This is the entry criteria, and then just to add the cherries on top of the cake, that could be a limit order once price comes back to that 15-minute order block. If you wanted to take it from the imbalance of that 15-minute candle, you can do. And of course, if you did want to wait for a lower time frame break of structure after you've had this, then of course you can do that as well. However, I think that the most important thing to wait for today would be a break of that structure point, which, to be honest, if I mean, I'm not sure, Boris, if you're still in it, but I mean, I'd be more than happy to compound that position personally if we start getting some breaks or structure pullbacks in this type of format. I think that would be a nice looking trade. With that said, as well, hopefully within the next 2 hours and 15 minutes, we see something different on that 4 hour time frame. I don't like to put ranges on the market all the time, but when you can see it, you just have to acknowledge it. The 4 hour over the last, let's say, 12 hours hasn't done anything. So therefore, that just backs up why we should be waiting for at least a break of structure on the 15 for a pullback into that area. I'm reluctant to call it a range on the 4 hour, excuse me, because look at the difference. If this for me is a clear range on the 4 hour, we've got the EMA starting to go through price action. At the moment, what we can say is that the EMA is simply doing its job and allowing price just about to stay above it. We had the last 4 hour candle close below it, but this 4 hour candle's trying its best to close above. So therefore, I'm not going to call it a range, and that's why although here I waited for a 4 hour break above, then pull back. and I'm not going to wait for a 4 hour break above and then pull back here because look at the difference in size. However, what I do need to see is price break up on the 15 and the comeback. If, for example, that continues for the rest of the week, then of course at that stage I'll be waiting for that by way of 4 hour. So we'd have a 4 hour range. I can't look to take a position at these lows, well, unless it's a range type of position. But the best type of position would be that 4 hour break, pull back and look for the long, just like we've done here. So don't feel disheartened if price moves and you don't get the position. Yesterday, I believe GCAD was a very nice long position. So therefore, it will provide an opportunity. You just have to wait for price to allow it to, well, you just have to wait for price to give you that opportunity. So that's GCAD. Only one alert I'll place on there of price crossing up and of course price breaking structures to the lows. Other than that, I won't be looking to take any other positions on GCAD until that happens. So yeah, that's the bias at the moment on GCAD. US dollar CAD. So slightly different. Didn't manage to, well, I could have taken an opportunity on US dollar CAD, to be honest, yesterday. It's just that GCAD materialized itself beforehand, and it's as simple as that, really. Much like UJ, I could have taken a position on UJ shorts as well. It's just that I took GCAD instead. And I did have some reasons behind that, but I just can't remember at the moment. So higher time frame, weekly time frame, weekly order block to the highs, shorting support or supporting the shorts coming out of that weekly order block. Nevertheless, we're not there now. What we can see in the market on that weekly time frame is prices failing to break above those most recent weekly highs. Simple as that, to be honest. And then finally enough, we have a daily order block again where price, bottom right hand chart, where price is failing to break below. I like that daily order block because price has made the low, come into the area. We've made a lower high, confirmed as a result of that lower low. Order block left behind, supported short by that daily 50 MA. It's a nice looking order block on US dollar CAD to take shorts from. So when we start to put that order block on, well, not that one, put this order block on all intervals so we can see where it is. Of course, it's right there up at the high. So again, it's looking good in terms of US dollar CAD to short from the highs. However, the question we then have to ask ourselves is what's our viewpoint on the DXY? So to paint a scenario for us all, if we said we're going to be patient on the DXY to understand, well, if the DXY is going to roll short for the day, let's say, I want to see the DXY actually start making at least a break of structure and a lower low. Now, on US dollar CAD, what that would be, in my opinion, at this stage, is simply price giving us a nice setup, break, and then the pullback. And then that will be us up here waiting for an entry criteria based on the fact that we're using the DXY's confluence and looking for pretty much exactly the same. Because our thought process, although we believe DXY is in a nice point of interest, I think it's clear to see at the moment that DXY is very bullish, and there's reason for that to be the case. So we'll just have to play that by ear. So US dollar CAD, technically it looks nice for the short, but again, you have to ask yourself, does it make sense for me to be shorting US dollar CAD, i.e. shorting the DXY at the moment when we're approaching the end of the week and actually our thought process, or I'm speaking for myself there, my thought process is it's going to be DXY long. So as a result of not wanting to take potentially a risk on UCAD short, why don't I just wait for an AU short, which would make more sense aligning with the DXY, which is pretty much the catalyst, as we know. When that moves, everything else moves. So refine that area down on the daily time frame. 4 hour order blocks are not okay, I'll put it in, but I already know refined area is going to be where that 15-minute order block is anyway. So here's a 4 hour order block that was available. However, it has been mitigated and price is now trading back into it. So it's not sort of that valid. If it was coming by way of a bearish engulfing candle that price hadn't tapped, then it would be more important. But I'll put it on just for the illustration if it's going to load. And there we go. So refine within that 4 hour order block right there up at the highs. As I say, refine within your area. Always seek to short from as high as you possibly can, particularly since Denise's in this, particularly if you're looking to take a sell limit, that is going to be your best opportunity for a sell limit. And actually, this isn't, I mean, despite what we've said about the DXY, this isn't a bad area for a sell limit because if you're wrong, you're just well and truly wrong. And who doesn't mind being wrong when there's no other thing that you can do, right? I mean, is it the best type of sell limit? I wouldn't say so. If we were to get a break of structure and then a pullback, then perhaps I would say better go for it. I mean, price action has already delivered the setup multiple times over. If you just start to put some areas in the market, hence why I believe still US dollar CAD, yes, it was a very good position. You start to put areas in the market, we have already broken areas of structure anyway. So the setup you could already argue is developed. However, just to gain that extra cherry on top of the cake, I wouldn't say that price actually has to pull into this area first and foremost and then break structure. I'd be happy just to have the intent of the market at least for the day, i.e., price breaking structures to the low, then pull back. I mean, we can create another scenario that price goes straight up into this area. Then at that point, it could be a slightly different type of setup where you just have to understand structure on the way in on a certain time frame. If it's not the 15, it could be the 5, and then you want to anticipate, well, not anticipate, you want to see where that last high was created from. Once you've got that higher low, then you'll be waiting for that break of structure. So that again is your setup entry type of criteria and confirmation. Then you have price pull up into that area and then you'd look for the short down. But again, that would be a more type of an aggressive type of position because you don't have that. And then what that would look on the DXY then is if I draw just the DXY, that would just be the DXY pulling up into the area without giving us the break that we want. Then the DXY would do pretty much exactly the same. And then whether or not you'd be comfortable to take a short on the DXY, recognizing that in fact that could just be the high. Here's a higher low, and your entry here could be as soon as you enter, that's when the DXY is going to make that higher high. So hence why that would be classed as an aggressive type of position without having the full break of a structure point on the 15-minute time frame. So long story short, or long story long, US dollar CAD, it looks okay. Technically, it's all right. We're trading out of that daily order block. It's good confluence for the short, but I think using all your technicals, I think it'd just be best to wait for something. And we all know there is never, it always feels like we have to be the first in the position. I get like that from time to time. I'll be the first to hold my hands up. I see prices in an area. I can understand exactly how to take it on a 1 minute time frame or even go to the 30-second time frame, be an absolute arse and justify that type of position. But we all know the best type of setup. You want to see a snap of an area and then just sit patiently. When you're back testing and you're clicking through price action, you have no, well, you will recognize, but while you're clicking, those are those 15-minute candles just clicking, 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 clicking. And then as you get to the market, we can't then be patient. So that's just my little rant of the morning that try your best to be patient. And when price starts to move in a direction that you figured it would, that's just your setup being confirmed anyway. And then just sit back, relax, set an alert right up at the highs, set a limit if you wish, and then off you go to the races. When it triggers, it triggers. As simple as that. On the flip side, I can't take a long position, and I would really like to. There's not an Asia range of, well, there is definitely an Asia range available, providing that price doesn't price does not fill Asia, and that would of course be from this low. And the reason for that is, if I make that slightly bigger for you guys to actually have a good view of it. So what structure on the 15-minute time frame? Evidently bullish. The most recent highs come from that area. Did we break structure points to the left? Yes, we did. Therefore, then if we were to roll back to that area, which would be down here, oops, where's that gone? which would be down here. Of course, I'd be waiting for a lower time frame break of structure on the 1 minute before then looking to fill Asia to those highs. Simple as that. So I quite like that, to be fair, in terms of an Asia range fill. So yeah, if I miss the short, which again, I'm happy to miss the short because if I can miss the short, then I'm definitely gonna have a look at US dollar CAD longs. Hopefully, the Asia is available. The reason why I can't take US dollar CAD longs is, of course, I'll be logging into a daily order block that, despite my thought process of price actually moving bullish, it doesn't make sense for me to log into a daily order block where I am anticipating price should really reject from it. However, tomorrow, if we get a who's this? Good morning. Nevertheless, tomorrow, if we do get a bullish candle above that daily order block, then of course that order block is wiped off the system. We'll have a beautiful looking 4 hour trend on, of course, on the 4 hour time frame. 15 minutes going to look good. The daily is going to look good, and all we're going to have to do is just sit back, wait for the pullback. Thank you very much. US dollar CAD continued longs. So I can't take longs today, other than an Asia range. I can take shorts because I'm shorting out of an order block. But do I want to take shorts without confirmation? Absolutely not. Cool. So that's US dollar CAD. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those for you guys. What have I missed? Yeah, that's it on US dollar CAD at the moment. Now, perfect. Um, Good. I'm happy to see that. We'll talk about EU. So EU, of course, wanting EU to come out of that weekly order block, looking to for that to roll short for the week. Would that make sense? Well, yeah, we're looking at the DXY wanting to go long out of its own weekly order block for the week. So it makes sense for us to be shorting the cross pair. Grand. So as we start to refine those areas down, what do we have? On the daily time frame, I'm not going to clog the chart, but there is a daily imbalance here, and that lines up perfectly. If you can see my crosshair, that lines up perfectly with that structure point, give or take, on the 15-minute time frame, and also that 4 hour 50 MA, where price is being held underneath it. So nothing else on the daily time frame, but for price, in my opinion, is going to start moving to that daily order block. And as you can see, it's got that daily 50 MA there as well, where price is holding, I'd say, pretty darn well from that daily 50 EMA. Price hasn't closed below it for a considerable amount of time, and I expect that when the EU gets there, EU is going to be looking to reject it as well. Might have a little trend below it, as we always see below the EMAs, but I think overwhelmingly we would get a bit of a bullish move coming out of that area. But again, it's all just going to depend on the strength of the DXY and how long the DXY is going to push. But nevertheless, I would be looking for a long position from there and then looking for a turnaround on the DXY as the DXY starts to have a pullback after making higher highs. So refine those areas down at the moment. So this 4 hour order block, it is pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And that's why I'm happy to see it. Hopefully, this 4 hour candle will break and close below it because I don't like to use 4 hour order blocks in the middle of nowhere. But when price has, of course, I mean, it's not in the middle of nowhere. I'll give it its one credit. We've had a high come out of that area. So, as a result of a high and candle closures above most recent areas, particularly this wick area, if it leaves an order block behind, that's why I've selected it. However, in recent candles, i.e., every candle since yesterday. Yeah, today is Wednesday. No, we had one closure above. Aside from that, yesterday, okay, so pretty much the majority of yesterday, as soon as we had that candle close below that 4 hour 50 MA on EU, we've remained rejecting it. So, of course, you get that now lower high rejection of the 4 hour 50 MA. And what I really hope to see is just a lower low being confirmed. When we get that lower low, in my opinion, that's when we'll see DXY start to break that kind of nearly area in the market as well. And then, as in my opinion, DXY starts to make those highs, that should drive EU down to these lows. And then from those lows, of course, we'll wait for the DXY turnaround and take that long position back towards the upside. Anyway, that's enough forecasting. Here and now, what do we have? What is that? Um, did you guys draw on the chart? maybe. It's okay, I'll forgive you. We'll refine those areas down. So I want overwhelmingly, I do want to take a short um, on EU, and that will be supported when we get a nice 4 hour candle closure, I hope, from that area. Or better still, if we can have price pull back into some of these highs. Again, just because price pulls back into those highs, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to be in that long position. It's something that took me a long time to get over, let's say 5 years ago, where I wanted to trade every direction. Because when you start analyzing the market, putting out your technical analysis, and you understand, okay, well, if I want to sell from there, then of course price has to get up there. So I should be, Mr. If you don't mind drawing on the chart, I'd appreciate that. If I want to sell from this area, therefore price must get up to that area. Therefore, I must buy up. Therefore, then for me to sell down. I think once you become more confident in your ability that you can just wait for a certain directional trade, I believe your trading really does come together. And only of late, I started to slightly deviate from that because I figured, well, I might not, based on the erraticness of the DXY, I was thinking, well, I might not be able to even get in the position I want to get in. So let me get in a position. But when you take a bit of a step back, and you guys know I looked through my analysis as a result of getting loads of break-even trades, that's when I realized, well, that's what I was doing, trying to get the market in both directions. So for me, I'd be happy to sit out the longs, but doesn't mean I won't take the shorts, if you see what I mean. Um, because I think the shorts make a lot more sense. We're trading out of session highs, trading out of weekly order blocks. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to be shorting from. In the immediacy, then, if I make this 15-minute chart slightly bigger for us to have a look at, we are based on the 15. I've got no reason to really want to take a long position anymore. I know that zoomed out, but that's just to give you a bit of an idea. If you go back to sort of the basics of trading, you'll hear people saying things like the trend is your friend, trade the trend and things like such. But and it does make sense because the first thing that I always look to teach and I always look to do is I'm always drawing on the chart to understand what really is price action doing. So as I look at this 15-minute time frame, I can't really understand longer term what's going on if I take into consideration all of this price action. And I also, well, and what I can understand, however, is what's going on recently, i.e., this. So that is clearly bearish. And that's supported by, I know it's not clear, but what we can say is a lower low, lower high, and now a lower low has just been confirmed. Therefore, for me, stepping to the charts this morning, looking at EU, I'm saying to myself, where there is only one real way that I can get myself involved into this trading opportunity at the moment. And it's not just because of my thought process. I don't have any order blocks to look to manipulate to the left like this anyway, in order for me to be aggressive and say, okay, well, I'll just wait for a bullish engulfing candle, then order block to be created, and wait for price to come back into that area, and then look for the long. What it's saying to me is, well, actually, structure is very much so bearish. Therefore, I'm going to need to wait for a conclusive break of structure to the upside, pull back into an area of interest, and only then can I then look to manipulate that by waiting for that bullish engulfing candle and my entry criteria to develop. So that's really the process at the moment. And as we've seen, we've just made a lower low. So therefore, my structure point becomes even more critical because I'm not going to take a long position now after we've just made a lower low. And I recognize a long position would push me into profit, but it would only take me to around about here before price makes that lower low, lower high continuation. So EU, I'm not against it completely. I can understand how you could get in a long position, but I think technically it would make a lot more sense, like on the DXY, to understand if the DXY is going to be bearish, we're going to wait for the DXY structure point to be broken and pull back into an area of interest. If we miss that cross pair position based on DXY weakness, and it just is what it is. And if I miss this long position here on EU, it is what it is because I recognize my better position is going to come from those highs anyway. So for price action to actually roll up and pull back, then of course the DXY, as I've just said, is going to need to show some clear signs of bearishness. And then again, that same question, are we really anticipating that? At the moment, personally, not. I don't believe so, but that's just my own thought process, not necessarily technicals. So what I can see here is somebody drawing fireworks on the chart, first and foremost. I'm gonna have to try and get rid of that. Um, does that do it? Clear all drawings. Fantastic. Cool. Yeah, so that's what I'll do for long positions. Now, shorts. The only thing with the shorts, you guys know how I trade. 4 hour order blocks, I still will respect my strategy despite having a fought against my own strategy. So I can't take a short right now, unless it would be an Asia range. And the reason for that is, of course, this 4 hour order block is causing a bit of a pain in the ass for me. So when this 4 hour candle hopefully closes bearish, first thing I'm going to do is do that. Then I'm going to restart the process, and I've already got a 4 hour order block here, hopefully that would be available for price to then come back into. Does that make sense? Well, of course, lower low, lower high. We've made the lower low, lower high, off we go to the races. So once we've got that on the market, I want to see does that make sense on the 15 and where does that lie? So back to the 15-minute time frame, and you guys can already see in terms of price action and structure, that makes sense for an area to pull back into for price to pull back after making that low. And you guys know what type of entry criteria that would be for me. It's one that I call a snap and a retest. So I'll be having price snap Asia lows. It's fine. I'll lose a confluence of Asia as of course trading towards the Asia to be filled. But what I would have is price action actually creating a break of structure, showing me its intention for the day ahead. Do I have a 15-minute order block available, hopefully up at the absolute highs? So there's one right up at here that I'd love for price to come back to, for us to take that short from. Alternatively, if I see a good turnaround, no, I don't think that's wise because you've got Asia up at those highs. So actually, I think it would be really, there'd be every good reason for price once this 4 hour candle closes to want to trend back up to these highs, fill Asia, have that area of imbalance just above Asia. We know the reason why we trade those Asia range positions is because it's more than likely that, well, it's not more than likely, it's facts that liquidity is sat above and below Asia. And more often than not, once the liquidity is grabbed, then the opposite Asia is filled. So the fact that this Asia is filled, but we've got structures to support our reason short, this is why we wouldn't really necessarily be wanting to use an order block in the middle of nowhere, i.e. here, wait for price to come all the way back up, fill Asia to those highs, grab the liquidity. We won't be the first in the trade because we will be waiting for an entry criteria. And then the reminder is that bearish engulfing candle will, of course, be breaking structure points on that 1 minute or even the 5 minute from time to time. And I'll draw it here for you. So as we start trending back up in this scenario, back up to that 15-minute order block, this is the 1 minute structure that we're printing. And then we have something like so up at those highs. Once you get that bearish engulfing candle, all of those structure points are broken. This one is broken, and that's all just from a 15-minute bearish engulfing candle. You'll then be able to restart that process on any time frame you want. Even if price then rolls back to the 15, you can take it. If price rolls back to the imbalance of the candle, you can take it. If you want to do as I like to teach, then refine that area all the way down to the 5 or the 1 to get yourself a much tighter stop loss. You can do that as well. But I would be inclined to say, well, you've waited for enough. Price action's developed on the 4, it's developed on the 1, 15-minute order block. You've waited for a bearish engulfing candle. I'd be saying take that position from that 15-minute order block, have your stop loss in a good position, and see what's going to happen. So that's EU. Bit of a longer term forecast, but that's why I haven't really been pushing the analysis out early because I'm seeing that price is just moving away from it anyway, and it's not really beneficial to you guys. So seeing this candle move here, it's all good news. One line would do it, and there we go. So hopefully we get that. But With that said, yeah, we are going to need to see kind of the opposite of what we want our strategy to do, but that it happens, right? And we adapt. So that's kind of what we have at the moment. Hopefully, we don't reject that order block, and actually, the rejection of the order block has already happened, right? Because in actual fact, the order block at this stage is mitigated. So therefore, the fact that it's already been used, we have to wait for something more to take the position in that direction. And that's what we're going to be looking to do. So, sorry, long story long. Again, that's EU. I hope that makes sense. UJ, again, UJ. Technically, it looks good for shorts, right? We can say, what can we say? Weekly time frame. Not much at all, but what we did, or what I was trying to explain, was the fact that price rolled down. We started to range on that weekly time frame. Remember what we said about when there's ranges on any time frame, you wait for the move in the direction, you wait for the pullback before the lower low to be created. So that's a thought process on the weekly, quite long-winded. And then you go to the daily time frame, you get exactly the same, which makes great sense. So price knows how to trend. It was trending up here. Then price made very clear highs, very clear lows, very clear, etc., etc. We broke out of that market, pulled back, looking for the short. So it makes sense on the daily as well. With that said, there's a daily order block. Where is that? Just a sec. Where's that gone? Drawings. I'm being trolled here with this drawing stuff. Cool. All right, my thought process. Ooh, daily order block. Daily order block. Where is it? So that's not right. That shouldn't be there. Daily order block would have been. Okay. Well, here is actually, and that a good reason, because I was going to disprove taking UJ shorts in a way that you guys might not really get, but this kind of proves it a better way that I'm sure you would understand. So UJ shorts at the moment, as we said, weekly low, 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 high, low, low continuation. Daily supports that as well. Daily order block, there was one here, so but I'm just gonna have to start clogging the charts. But what you're seeing is I'm putting a daily order block in the highs to short out of. And as a result of yesterday's daily bullish candle, we've got another order block that's created to long out of. Therefore, our trading range is minute, if not just completely nil. Because if I put that on the chart, so if you look to the 4 hour time frame, this is the daily order block looking to go long. And then if you look again to the 4 hour time frame, this is the daily order block looking to go short. Therefore, UJ, although it looks, we can say, quite nice on the 15, judging by the fact that if I, we even will start from the 4 hour time frame, 4 hour order block, as a result of this tremendously huge bearish candle. Left the order block behind. Price is trending in and around that area. Great. As price then wants to come back to that area, of course, we're looking for that reaction from it. However, that 4 hour 50 MA has joined the party. And as a result of joining the party, as a result of that accumulation of so many order blocks in and around the area, price is just doing absolutely nothing. Therefore, when I get to UJ this morning, but don't get me wrong, still based on order block 4 hour, I would be looking for price to come out of that. But then understand we're rolling straight into a daily order block where price is looking to actually push towards the upside. So it's not looking great for UJ from this current area, I must admit. However, what we can, just to add a bit more technical to this 4 hour candle, although it was massive, what did it do? It didn't really do anything because we were in a range. We popped out of that range and price just went straight back in that range. So therefore, although it's a point of interest, it's not a point of interest as you guys would know it, is it really? Because we haven't had a lower low created. Every order block that I've selected thus far on a 4 hour and below, it more often than not would be as a result of actually creating a break of structure. However, this 4 hour candle didn't break any structure points. So therefore, the fact that we're looking to use it is questionable in the first place. So as we then refine those areas down, 15-minute time frame now, up at those highs, 15-minute order block. Again, that 15-minute order block, it is tremendous, but it hasn't really done too much. Okay, I'll give that a little bit more flowers, or is that just a wick? Yeah, that's just a massive wick right back into that 4 hour range anyway. So again, I do foresee a reaction coming from it. I'm not going to just completely I can't swear, completely dismiss it. However, I don't think it would make sense at the moment based on this reason. So the DXY, we recognize again that the DXY has every opportunity to roll short for a little bit, in terms of creating that lower, excuse me, higher low before then making a higher high on the DXY. That's our anticipation. So therefore, although I'm anticipating a potential short here, I think it could be short-lived. But with that said, would I be looking to take immediate shorts out of UJ? The only thing I like is the fact that we do have this order block up at the highs that still remains there. So that allows me personally the opportunity to be quite aggressive, because the order block is actually available. And what I mean by that is 15-minute bearish, 15-minute order block, lower time frame break of structure, take the short. I can do that, but I don't think it's wise. Um, I just don't. I'm just getting the feeling that I just don't think it makes sense. And what I much prefer to see is price break structure, then pull back, then I take it from that area. No problem at all. So again, not dismissing you, Jay, but I'm not going to be looking for immediate shorts. I have to admit, guys. I'm going to wait for a break, pull back into the area. If that is the intent of the market, if the DXY wants to support that thought process as well, bear in mind then, as a result of all of this, all of the forecast of the day would be incorrect, because that would mean if UJ rolls short, EU's going to push from that area that we're seeing at the moment. AU would then push up through those highs that we're overwhelmingly looking at short from that weekly order block. So I mean, I don't mind being wrong, and I am wrong many times, or many times over, I should say. But I don't know. I'm just, I just don't feel that the DXY would fail us in terms of looking to go long. But it's just my thought process. If you guys are able to unmute yourself, be glad to hear what you think. I'm always open to ideas, but I'm trying to cover both options. In terms of the longs, which, excuse me, the shorts that look good, that I don't fully support, but I would take them because I know I'm not better than the charts. But the shorts then, excuse me, the longs again. So I realized that price for a very nice looking long, or just an average looking long, price has to come down here. So if I can entertain the short, I will. But I want to see that confirmation. Just break the structure, pull back, and then I'll take it after an entry criteria for sure. I would take UJ. I like the way it looks, but knowing that there's an order block here to the upside, order block here to the downside, I mean, I think there's better opportunities that we've covered, but we'll see. As you guys can see already, I've got two alerts: break of structure below the 15-minute order block, and that's all I'm going for. When those go off, then I'll entertain something. GU, GU. So GU, higher time frame, looking for price to come out of that higher time frame order block to the downside. And then once we refine those areas down onto the daily time frame, what do we have now? Daily order block. done a good job. Price wicked in, wicked out, failed to break above. We keep it on the chart and we look to understand why price is rejected. So we start refining all those areas down. And then also on the daily time frame, a bit of conflict as a result of that bullish engulfing candle that, in my opinion, although it doesn't look as if it broke structure, what's the important element to take out of what's been going on the daily time frame? We've been failing to break above this area. Then a daily candle comes out, gives us a bullish engulfing candle, and then gives us a daily order block to then look to trade out of. So again, bit of a tight range on GUs. It's kind of giving, might not be the best opportunity until you get something a bit more conclusive, i.e., if you're not going to be selling from up at these highs, I don't think it would be wise to sell here. I think EU would look a lot better to sell from that snap and the retest on the 15. But what I'd love to see is a daily candle close below the daily 50 MA, below the daily order block. Then you'll be trading alongside daily 50 MA, and this order block would be taken off the charts completely. Then you have a break of structure, let's say on the daily time frame as well, which again, I don't take that into consideration, but when you see it, of course, it's a big tick and a confluence that you can understand and read what's going on even on the daily time frame. So I don't believe any positions on GU may materialize just yet. We'll have to see what's going on. So when we refine those areas down, what do we have? There is a 4 hour order block that is no longer available. So no real immediate positions to be taken. And what we have from that area, of course, we've had a push breaking structure points to the left, hence why we're looking to use it when price does its thing and then eventually rolls back. But the news is, so price has already tapped into it. We haven't seen a rejection. Well, we have seen a rejection, but nothing in terms of what you'd want to see. You'd even expect price at least push up towards that 4 hour 50 MA, failing to receive that. But what we do have is a little mini range going on. Then when we go bring everything to the 15-minute time frame, make that bigger for us, we can understand quite clearly what's gone on here. So I don't mind taking this position. I think technically it's quite an easy position to take. Um, but it's kind of whether or not you're comfortable to take that position. So here is the range that we're seeing on the 4 hour time frame, and really just try to understand where the liquidity may well lie to understand why these immediate positions based on, let's say, just support and resistance, why they probably shouldn't be taken and why we don't take them immediately, because we understand how ranges work. I'm never the first in a range trade. I always wait for price above and below to show its hand first and foremost. And at that point, you allow the range traders that, in my opinion, don't know how to trade the range uh, technically well. They then provide us with the liquidity. So I'm just waiting for the highs and the absolute lows, to be quite honest. And that is this area here, right there at the low, that has created the first bullish move that actually begun that range. As you see, we've not made a high from that area before. But when people are seeing the range, they're forgetting about the highs and the lows completely and understanding that there are all the buyers looking here. They could well just be broken out of that structure point, driven back down into the area of interest, stopped out, and we'll be looking for confirmation for the long. So again, it's definitely not a favorite. I believe there is better out there. And then what we would need to understand is, of course, what the DXY does will, of course, drive this range in either direction. And as we said, on to the downside, daily closure, that'll look nice on the 4 hour. We'd have that order block broke. We start pulling back into new areas, looking for continuation shorts. And then in the other direction, if the DXY is, of course, weak, then we'd have that break above that range, break above the 4 hour 50 MA, pull back into an area of interest, and then hopefully we'll be on our way. So we'll just have to see. But GU is definitely not a favorite, to be honest. As you can see, that's probably why we've discussed it towards the end. I'll give it an amber because I only really take these types of positions if there's nothing else. And what I mean is nothing else even worth waiting for. But AU is giving me all the reason not to take that range trade because an AU position here is just quite straightforward as well. And then finally, GJ. GJ. Where are we on GJ? Weekly time frame. I didn't think there was too much. Oh, there is. Yeah, weekly order block has been mitigated. However, we're failing to break and close above it, so therefore it remains on the chart. Then, as we start to refine that area down on the weekly, got an area right there up at the highs. That was from, if I remember, yeah, that wick imbalance from July 2008, which completely crashed the market. Nevertheless, refine that area down. We've got a daily order block, so that's the best place that we'd be looking for a short position down. However, as prices develop, and we can see quite clearly we're not doing anything in and around those areas. So if you refine even just that little quick box that I've just drawn, we're here. And that's why we'd be looking for a potential opportunity coming out of that area, for example. So let me get rid of that now from the daily. So straight away you recognize again it's a kind of a range bound market on GJ. Nothing really going on even from that degree of size. Now, 4 hour time frame, the only thing that I can really look to play with is that 4 hour order block as a result of this bearish engulfing candle. But again, what has that candle done? It hasn't broken structure on the four, it hasn't broken structure on the 15-minute time frame either. Therefore, just supports the fact that what we already know, it's a bit of another type of range position looking to be developing. So when I go that, bring that rather to the 15-minute time frame, we can seek to understand what's going on. So, of course, best position right up at these highs, be looking for a short whenever price gets there. I also believe that the best position long is going to come from this 5 minute order block. That if we can be factual, we have had a break of structure from this area, breaking high, breaking most recent high, which again, if price comes down, I'll be waiting for my entry criteria looking for that long. Again, just because I would wait for the longs doesn't mean that I have to take the shorts, not necessarily. But what I am going to need to see, unfortunately, not necessarily. Um, the only thing I don't like is all of this. And I know my stop loss is not going to be covering all of this. I recognize this is based on higher time frame, but remember we can have price push through a 4 hour order block and it still has 4 hours for price to want to reject that order block. You can forget about the 15, of course, but once you can see a kind of session high in the market, this 15-minute order block for me becomes a little less attractive to say. I think was it even like US dollar CAD yesterday, where it went through the area and then it went to a slightly higher session high. Nevertheless, so I'm not completely against GJ shorts, but it would have to, in my opinion, price is probably going to want to come up to these highs. Is just my feeling, because I can't do this. That wouldn't make sense based on my risk reward down to the daily 50 MA, I believe. So the 4 hour is on side and the daily we closed above it. So my range is only to the daily 50 MA. So I already know that I can't have a tremendously large stop loss. So my stop loss, what I'm going to have to make that is around 30 pips maximum on GJ, which GJ does move. So 30 pips are very much so doable. We moved 30 pips yesterday. However, I believe the higher you get, of course, then the smaller your stop loss can be, and then you're better your risk to reward ratio. So not against GJ. As you can see, I've got an alert as price is going to approach this area here. I'll just bring it slightly higher when it approaches that 15-minute order block, and it will then give me something to think about. Haven't really had any structural breaks just yet, but I think if GJ is to be taken, and you guys know I've swapped out EG for GJ. Therefore I'm just applying every method that I trade onto that. So I won't bore you with the amount of positions that I've taken on GJ, but for you guys listening at the moment on how you could take GJ, I believe up at those highs would be a lot better. If not the best case scenario for you to take GJ, be incredibly patient, wait for this area to be broken, and then have that pullback. And then your entry criteria, look for the short back down. That's what I foresee. But at the moment, that for me is just going to be a typical type of range position. Anyway, hence why I don't believe that this order block is going to be the order block to look to short from. I believe price is going to go a lot higher, then give me the entry criteria, and then I'll look for the short position down. So that is the sum up team. I hope it makes sense. I'm not doing anything. I might go out, but we'll see. We'll see how the cookie crumbles. But if you've got any questions, send them in the chat. And I'm trading live anyway, so whatever I'm looking at, then I'll be sure to let you guys know. Denise, Boris, thank you both for joining me. I appreciate it. And have a good trading day. You'll hear from me later and another live call tomorrow. Take
Thank
care.
you.
You're welcome, Denise. All the best.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.